Yeah.
Said Fed slashes interest rates by half a point. An aggressive start to its first easing campaign in 4 years. The Federal Reserve on Wednesday enacted its first interest rate cut since the early days of the COVID pandemic, slicing half a percentage point off benchmark rates in an effort to head off a slowdown in the labor market. With both the jobs pictures and inflation softening, the central bank's Federal Open Market Committee chose to lower its key overnight borrowing rate by a half percentage point or 50 basis points, affirming market expectations that had recently shifted from an outlook for a cut half that size. I mean, so we gotta with that, man. A lot of people are very, very happy that the Feds cut the rates because
Yeah.
this affects borrowing and affects mortgage rates across the board. This affects borrowing basically by banks. What this is the Federal Reserve will set its interest rate basically a borrowing rate for banks because banks borrow money from the Fed. The Fed prints the money, banks borrow money from it, and the less banks can borrow money for it, the less interest rates they're going to charge the consumer on most times. That's why interest rates went housing rates and stuff went up from they were down like an all-time low of like 2 point something percent and now they're sitting around like 6 or so. So it just basically took borrowing through the roof. Like you could at one point in time at 2%, you could get a say you can get a home that was like 275,000 or whatever for like $1,200. Now
Yeah.
that same one's going for like 24, $2,600. So it just makes your borrowing much, much harder when the Fed had to basically raise interest rates. But this was really the big thing that made inflation, made the economy kind of made people suffer because you couldn't, because what happens is a lot of times people borrow money from their homes, they borrow money from different things. This is what keeps the economy kind of flowing right here. And after 2008, man, when 2008 came around, interest rates, they kind of had to start dropping interest rates. I mean, just so that they could start getting more money into the economy because we went through a major housing crisis. Banks didn't want to lend money to anybody. Like, fuck that shit. We ain't lending nobody money right now because we don't trust y'all. Everybody just defaulting on all these homes. All these loans is going bad right now. So the Fed had to come in and be like, here, man, we're going to give you all this money basically for free. Just lend it out to people. You know what I mean? You guys can make money. It'd be easy for y'all. Y'all pretty much making money off free money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they kept rates low for a long time through Obama's presidency, which was 8 years, which they could have rose rates at that time. But I believe that at that time, when the transition between Obama and the next president, which ended up being Trump, they didn't want to raise interest rates. No president wants to be sitting when you raise interest rates because it makes borrowing harder. It makes people have to go through, oh, we don't have any money, man. Where's the money? Everybody broke. This is why, because banks are not lending. Most
Yeah.
people live off credit. That's what people are living off of. Let's just be real and it's smart to live off credit when you have good credit and you have money sitting in other investments, but not when you live in paycheck to paycheck. But anyway, so Trump gets in office. He doesn't cut interest rates either, and he does a tax cut, and and he drives the debt up by $9 trillion in 4 years, which no other president had even done in 8 years. I think Obama came close, maybe did a little bit more than him in 8 years after the economic crisis he went through. And so when Biden gets in office, what happens? They start raising interest rates. Now everyone's like, oh, man, everyone's broke. Nobody got no money. It's because he had to stave off. They raised interest rates to stave off inflation. Inflation jumped to 9%. They said we got to get inflation back around 2.5%. That's a target rate for inflation. The Fed likes to see inflation at right there. And so they raise interest rates, which sucks money out of the economy. This is what they do. They start pulling money out of the economy. They don't want loose money policy anymore because everything's starting to rise in prices.
I would like it for we could have the last week of June, the first week of August, and the whole month of July as tax-free time, and with no effects on us. I want it to be where we get, say, there's 4 weeks in July, 6 weeks out the year where nobody has to pay tax on nothing. No tax on food, no tax on gasoline, no tax on groceries, no tax on your house, no tax on anything. Okay. I think if I introduce that law, everyone would vote for it. And it shouldn't be a thing where you don't pay tax for this long in this period. You can even buy a house in July. People just buy their house in July. You don't have to pay taxes on it. Perfect. But you don't have to pay tax on everything in July to just help Americans out. We complain. We broke away from the British to not pay taxes. And we pay taxes on everything.
Over taxation.
Over taxation is what's happening right now. We need to have a period in our life where we just don't have to pay taxes. You know what I'm saying?
And in our country, we know that our taxes don't even really fill in what our country spends. We're like one of the worst. You know, I mean, I think like Germany or France or one of those guys are one of the best at like how much tax dollars they bring in per how much money they spend as a country.
Yeah.
We're like one of the worst, man. Like our tax, even though we're being taxed the hell out of our government spends like it does. It has, you know what I mean, an infinite amount of money, because in reality, off our backs, it does until so everyone says the game's over. You know what I mean? So I mean, this Fed rates cut helps a lot, because even Donald Trump, he came out, he was like, either this is just a bad monetary policy, or the Fed's trying to sway the election. Pretty much, he's like, either you guys are doing really bad, but no, this is regular stuff. This is what the Feds are supposed to do when they see the economy starting to do well, but it's laying dormant. You cut rates so that you can free up a little bit of capital, get people some money flowing again, so you can get things moving a little bit better. Because you got to imagine, when you free up capital, now a person can build that casino, or they can build these housing developments, or they can build this, you know what I mean, whatever other project, and they're doing it for a lot less than what they'd have to pay. Say if I took a loan out and the interest rates are fucking 7-8%, I mean, versus it being 5%, you're saving a lot of money with that. You know, you want people to, they said housing like applications jumped by 14% immediately when that happened. You know, which is small, but you know, I can see people are starting to talk this up. But I mean, no one wants to, like, Biden set with interest rates high they haven't cut rates in 4 years.
Yeah.
In 4 years. You know, I think the last time they cut rates was during COVID. And they're helping you out. That just tells you Trump that they did this to help you out when you allowed us to, you know, basically go through hell with COVID. They fucking cut rates when it was on you. You were happy with that then. You should have rose rates during your presidency and would have stopped inflation a lot sooner. Wouldn't have had that, because you imagine inflation jumped up a year after Biden was in office, and we all know a year after you're in office, you're still living off of the past administration's mess. And so, you know,
2 years.
You know what I mean? And so that's just that's a pretty big thing. I feel like, you know what I mean, right now with the Fed's cutting rates, man, the stock market is on a run. I think the market right now is almost at 42,000, which is all-time high territory right now. You know what I mean? Like, with them knowing that the Feds are going to be dumping some more money in the market, people are going to have money. It's just, you know, it's a pretty big deal right now. And I felt like we needed to talk about that. I got